McKnight,
Here.
Roa,
Here.
Vogel,
Here.
Stearns.
Here. Pledge of allegiance. I see we got the flag up. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Katie, public comments. Any comments for the agenda items?
No, Your Honor, I did not receive any public comment.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Andy, would you want to give us a disaster emergency update, please?
Yeah, and this is just a standard agenda item. A reminder to council that we continue to operate under the declaration until further action by council. We should probably begin to give some thought as to when we might end that. As many of you are aware, I believe it was just yesterday, it might have been Monday now at this point, that Governor Wolf and Acting Secretary of Health issued revised orders with respect to the travel mitigation order. They ended that. And so no longer required for folks traveling out of state for more than 24 hours to be tested upon return. And then a revision, a slight relaxation, if you will, of occupancy standards with respect to gatherings, indoor and outdoor events and gatherings. So maybe perhaps of more interest or most interest to council with respect to future council meetings, the indoor gathering guidelines with respect to occupancy change from 10% to 15% occupancy. So not a dramatic change there. In terms of sort of based on a building code occupancy limit. So that's what governs indoor events right now. So that's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay, Andy, while we're discussing that, just to remind the public that the St. Patrick's Day Parade has been canceled for this year. And the Memorial Day Parade, Andy, I guess they're going to continue to work as if there may be a parade. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, they're still planning to that end. There's not been a final decision yet. We'll monitor what guidelines continue as they continue to evolve. But for now, they've begun sort of their normal reach out and planning process with respect to the ceremony and parade. And we'll be working on alternate plans, developing alternate plans for the ceremony if it's deemed that that's not an acceptable public health risk.
Okay,
so
thank you.
More to follow.
Okay, appreciate it. Notices of executive meetings, Katie?
Your Honor, an executive session was held on February 17th, 2021 to discuss litigation, and an executive session was held again on February 22nd, 2021 to discuss personnel.
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes, please.
I motion.
I'll second.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Donahue,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Roa,
Aye.
Vogel,
Aye.
Stearns.
Aye. Communication, Katie, have we received any communication?
No, Your Honor, I did not receive any communication.
Okay, thank you. Manager's report, Andy.
Good evening, Council. Just sort of a number of random updates. Katie, do you know if we're expecting Nathan Zazula to participate with respect to the East Street brick conversion?
No, I believe you had told him on Friday he did not have to attend.
Okay. Very good. I'll handle that then.
Okay.
So just by way of various updates, based on council feedback earlier in January, staff is now planning for a spring cleanup day to be held Saturday, May 15th. So we have in fact reserved the date. We will be pushing that out via formal press release and Facebook notifications, but we have set that date for Saturday, May 15th. Council, last fall, you awarded a contract. We received Act 13 at-risk bridge funding from the county a while back, and last fall we awarded a contract to Thornberry for improvements and rehabilitation of the bridge deck and other improvements of the Liberty Street Bridge. So the contractors informed us that beginning the week of March 22nd is when they begin to plan construction, and they actually propose to close the bridge for 1 full month. And so we're just received that information, I think, on Friday. We're beginning now to notify property owners, and again, we'll issue a formal press release, but we're notifying stakeholders first. But so we should expect that project to begin the week of March 22nd, and that there will be approximately 1 month closure depending on weather, as long as the weather cooperates. There's concrete work associated with that, with the bridge deck that will require the concrete overlay, curing, and test results that require the closure. In, I think, late November or early December, Council, you authorized signatures on a DEP, a new lease agreement, a new 10-year lease agreement with the Department of Environmental Protection. Actually, the agreement is with the Department of General Services, the Commonwealth, for the DEP building, Northwest Regional Office. Last week, the Pennsylvania Department of General Services authorized signatures on that lease as presented to them in the terms that we had reviewed. So essentially, that new lease agreement will be effective, and so that's a great development. We're grateful to keep the Northwest Regional Office here and their 200 employees here in downtown Meadville. The majority, if not nearly all of them, continue to work from home, which is probably right now a bit of a blessing in that the new lease agreement, we've already, as you're aware, have done a major HVAC and lighting upgrade, which is now complete. But the new lease agreement requires us to recarpet and paint pretty much the entire building, and so we hope to get on that expeditiously. Bidding specifications and documents are being prepared right now, hopefully for release soon by Porter Consulting Engineers. So at some point you'll see coming back to council bid recommendation and for contracts for painting and carpeting. And I also want to note and thank a recent donation made last week to the Meadville City Fire Department from employees of Meadville Medical Center who donated $1,200 that'll go into an equipment fund. And I guess that's a sort of an employee program where they choose a charity and hold either certain events or a jeans casual day that they can contribute, and then to a charity of their choice. So we thank the employees of Meadville Medical Center for that donation. Also, you would have seen in perhaps either the Meadville Tribune or the Erie Times coverage of our city-owned streetlight LED conversion, where we converted over 250 of our city-owned light fixtures. These are primarily the decorative light fixtures that you see on Chestnut Street, around the Market House, North Street, and other locations. These are not the Penelec-owned Cobra Head street lights that we have about 1,100 of those citywide. But we've completed a conversion of those fixtures with a grant from the Penelec Sustainable Energy Fund, which is administered by the Community Foundation for the Alleghenies. So we anticipate that change will result in 79% less energy use by those fixtures going forward, and would anticipate a reduction of about $8,520 annually in operating costs based on the reduced energy usage. So we are grateful to the Community Foundation for the Alleghenies for that support, and Penelec as well. And our next plan is to continue. We've done some conversion work with Penelec on requests of conversion of some of the Cobra Head lights, but we plan to continue to pursue that opportunity as well. And I think, Your Honor, that might be it in terms of general updates for now. As you had mentioned already, that the St. Patrick's Day Parade this year has been canceled, and also the Judith Jig Memorial 5K. They are taking that on as a virtual event this year, and so I encourage people to participate and support that as well. And by way of general updates, I think that's it. On the agenda, I guess, are there any questions there?
I just
Hearing.
have a
Oh,
question.
go ahead.
Oh.
Nope, go ahead.
Just quickly around the LED light conversion. Great work to staff in doing that. That's exciting. You mentioned the Penelec owned lights, and it's my understanding that maybe other cities, right, the utility provider owns those lights, but it's the municipality that pays for the operation of those. Is that the same here in Meadville? Like, do we pay for the operation of those Penelec owned lights?
That's exactly how that works. So we have about about 1 mil of tax expense, nearly 130, $140,000 in the budget that is our annual street lighting budget. That includes those Penelec owned fixtures. Those are regulated by the PUC. So the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission sets the tariff rates for those. So depending on the pole type, the type of fixture, the wattage of the fixture is a tariff rate set by and approved by the PUC. So that's the rate that we are essentially forced to pay.
Okay, got it.
Andy, does the city maintain maintenance on those lights, or is that the state or Penelec?
No, Penelec is they own and maintain them. But that's why it's important, right, when those lights are out and not functioning right, we're paying regardless. So it's important that citizens report those either to Penelec directly. They can do that on a website, or they can call here and we'll report it through the website. But they're owned and maintained by Penelec, but we pay the bill, and when they're not functioning, we need to notify Penelec because we're paying regardless.
Well, after the meeting, I want to give you an address of one that's been out for over 5 years.
Okay. We'll need to. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Finish what you were saying.
I'm not sure, but you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just to follow up on that, if we save $8,500 in electric on 250 of the city-owned streetlights, does it follow that we would save about $34,000 if we were able to convert all of them over to LED, or might the savings be more because they're larger lights?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but as you might suspect, being governed by the PUC, the tariff rates that's set for LED conversion, because the rate allows the utility company to essentially amortize the cost, to build in the cost of the fixture itself and the labor to replace it. The savings for the LED PUC rate aren't as lucrative as we might hope they would be.
All right, thank you.
We have done, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Jim, I'll be glad to do that, but we've worked on that analysis, and we've actually had Allegheny students last spring, I guess, at this point, do some analysis around that and what the savings opportunities are based on the PUC rates.
Thank you.
Andy, I just want to point out on Water Street that our new traffic lights looks like they're all working now. They're not going through a test system. They look pretty good.
Yeah, so they are right now. They were just turned on last week, mid to late last week, and they are undergoing a 30-day test. So under that test, the contractor is required to report and monitor those under Pennsylvania PennDOT regulations. So yep, they are operational, and we're working now. We haven't closed out the contract, but we'll be working to close out that actual contract. There's obviously still a punch list of work that needs to be done, and then we'll submit those reimbursements. But yep, they are operational.
Okay, great. And I also want to thank the staff, the streets department. That hole on Water Street was filled, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure most of the drivers are happy with that. So thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything else? Or, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to move on to some of the other topics on the agenda under the manager's report section.
Okay, go ahead.
So the first one then is letter A, presentation conversion of East Street from brick to asphalt. And what I'm sharing from you is a map of the location of East Street. This is a section of East Street from Fairmont Avenue, sort of the steep section that leads up to Willow Street, up to the Fairview Fairmont housing complex. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit if I can. So we're here tonight because council, back in 2018 is the last time council visited and adopted a Brick Street conversion policy. And essentially so it's generally the policy of council to, and this would be a residential area, that the policy reads, many residential streets currently have brick surface. It is generally intended to maintain these streets with brick surface going forward. However, later on the policy says, where it is determined a surface other than brick is more appropriate, city staff will provide a recommendation to council, and that any change from brick to asphalt material will not occur without council's consent. So city staff is recommending that this section of East Street is proposed to be bricks removed. It is in poor condition. I'm gonna, oh heck, go to a couple of pictures here prepared by the Public Works Department. I believe it is CDBG funding that is the source of funds for this. You'll see where the street is overall in poor condition, and we propose to remove the bricks, remove all of the bricks, repair the base. The curbs and gutters, you can see here on this east side, the curb and gutter is completely shot and in poor condition here. You'll see we're going to rebuild each of the, there's 4 catch basins that we need to work on. We need to install ADA ramps. We're going to completely repair the curb. And this would be essentially a complete rebuild of this section of street. And you'll notice here this bottom picture where the existing spacing between the bricks are creating a hazard, slippery road surface, and it's a very steep surface, which is challenging for brick streets. So it is a recommendation of the Public Works Department to convert this section of East Street from brick to asphalt, and it would require a resolution of council. We have notified the residents of East Street on this section of this intent and the recommendation, and that council would be acting on this recommendation via resolution at your next meeting. And so to give them the opportunity to provide comment, but this is the recommendation of council, and in pursuant to the policy, we would request council to approve that conversion at your next meeting.
Andy, I have a tangential question about this. Will the water and sewer lines, or are there any water and sewer lines or other lines that need to be redone before the paving is initiated?
So I don't know in this specific instance, but I know that the Public Works Department attempts to coordinate that with sewer, water, and national fuel utilities. So I think the answer is yes. I think we've at least had those conversations. They're aware. So I'm not aware of any specific work that those utilities have planned, but we do coordinate that.
And just for point of clarification, the curbing will probably be done by stormwater management funds, and the brick paving by a different pot of money. Is that correct? Over?
Yeah, so that's correct. I don't know if Gary or Katie know in this instance. It's possible in this instance that might all be coming out of CDBG capital. I'd have to confirm the source of funds, but sometimes in the past we do consider the curb and gutter system as a conveyance of the stormwater program. We have used stormwater funds in the past as part of street improvements, with the actual bricking or paving to be done with other capital dollars. In this case, Jim, I'd have to find out for you.
All right, no, that's fine.
Yeah, it's about a $64,000 cost of CDBG.
Andy, do you have any, like even a ballpark sense of what it would cost? Obviously, this street is in need of great repair. any ballpark sense of what it would cost to repair it and maintain the brick versus to convert?
So every brick needs to be touched here, right? So when we do a brick, you're literally touching and laying by hand every brick. I don't have in front of me, I feel like we've done, and I'd be glad for the next meeting when you consider this to have that estimate. I think we've done estimates in the past in prior conversions where we've tried to estimate what number of man hours it might take just to give council a sense of that investment. The challenge is the time it would take. Contracting it out, there's virtually no one that'll do it because we can't, it's manpower that's the most expensive, often is the most expensive element of a project. We're not really aware of anyone that would do that does Brick Street contracting, and the level of time that would take our staff to commit to this is a real challenge for us given all of our other priorities in a very short, relatively short window of weather to get a bunch of other projects done.
Gotcha. It just, yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like the trend is just like when a street gets bad enough and it's brick, it just seems like we just convert it. I guess I'm just pointing out that's where we're at. Yeah, another point that I would make too, I'd be interested to see the communication that went out to residents. I know in the past with other Brick Street conversions, you know, it's been voiced to me that the communication wasn't necessarily like in plain English, like it wasn't clear and folks didn't really understand what was kind of coming and the implications of what was in the communication they received. So
we'll share it with you, but you can rest assured it's very clear what will happen and what it'll be looking like.
Thanks, Andy.
Andy, do you have any idea when this street was repaired the last time? Some of these streets, like I'm thinking up by Chestnut Street, up on the top of Chestnut, they were repaired. I can remember when they were done, and I was in high school. So we're over 35 years ago. And I'm wondering if this street has been that long too.
So we don't have, we've got pretty good records on when streets were last paved. Those records are pretty accurate. What we don't have is where I don't think we've got good records when a major brick restoration was done. So I'd have to research that as well if we had that record.
That's fine. Just curious.
Yep. And Jim, in this case, Marianne tells me that in this case, the CDBG funding proposes do the curb and paving.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So just in summarizing that, then yeah, go ahead, Gary.
According to the GIS, this section of East Street was last done in 1926.
Which is probably when it was constructed. Right.
And it might not have been touched since then.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we've done spot repair. We just don't have records that would show that. But and Councilwoman Vogel, you're right that we've done some conversions. The conversions we've considered those when the section of Lord Street that we did a couple of years ago, right? When the base is completely pumped and heaved, you literally are starting over almost. There are certain other places where conditions are such, once water gets under these bricks, that's when you lose the entire base and the whole thing pumps up and you almost have to rebuild the entire street. Those are the ones we focused on so far, the worst of the worst that have converted in some cases. Obviously, I know Highland Avenue, we converted the lower, the upper section of Highland that was in need of complete repair, and we ultimately elected to do an asphalt overlay to Randolph Street. But those cases we focused on the worst of the worst that require complete rebuilding. Anything else on East Street at this point? next then is follow-up to Reverend Gary Manning's communication to council on the 21st of February. We entered that into the record at the last meeting, and Reverend Manning had asked that I don't know if I have his communication, asked that we had considered allowing him time to present on a possible memorial to Martin Luther King. And I had instructed council, one of those might be, one of the things I think might have been suggested as a street naming. I just wanted to share with council the street naming policy or street dedication policy that council last adopted in 2007. And oh, heck, I deleted it from my screen. But that policy is that essentially street dedications are to memorialize notable citizens of the city of Meadville per the 2007 policy. The background reads, the city of Meadville has benefited from the lives and service of many unique and dedicated citizens. The city council desires to implement a program of memorializing the lives and contributions of select outstanding citizens through the dedication of certain streets, ways, places, and portions of streets. The proposed dedications are and shall not be construed to be the renaming of any street, way, or place for U.S. Mail, 911, or other purposes. The dedicated portions of any street, way, or place shall not be identified by any person or entity in any official addressing for any purpose whatsoever. So again, it is the policy that you've adopted, like prior council adopted, is specific to City of Meadville citizens. And is done by resolution of council. So I don't know where you want to proceed from there, but that's at least the matters that pertains to street dedication. Council did not direct the communication from Reverend Manning, the February 1st communication. Let me find this. I'm ready to request and say the community has just celebrated the remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King. A thought came to me. The African community does not have a street, statue, or plaque in remembrance of him. So anyhow, he would simply like to address the matter with Meadville City Council. So I'll await your direction how you want to handle that now.
I think we should let him talk, make sure he understands the ordinance about not naming it after people, only residents, and see if he has any other ideas or, even a plaque would be, I think I understand what he's wanting, something just to recognize, but like I said, we don't, if you're not a resident, we don't do that. But I think we should listen to what he has and let him know what we, as council, might be able and willing to do.
I could communicate that to Mr. Manning, that to Reverend Manning, that inform him of the street dedication policy, and if it's council's desire to invite him to a future meeting or to present other ideas in writing or in person, I could do that.
That's fine with me.
It might be in writing at this point, given our meeting restrictions.
Right, right.
Is that a consensus of council? Yeah.
Andy, it's Leroy. I'd be interested to hear if they have a different idea in remembrance of Martin Luther King. So if the majority of council is okay with it, why don't we ask him to present us with some ideas that we might be able to take a look at that falls within the guidelines.
Are you suggesting in writing at this point, Mayor?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you suggesting that we present this in writing at this point?
I think it might be, of course, we don't know what we're going to do with our public meetings, but yeah, I think putting it in writing, of course, one, we won't forget about it then. And it might be helpful doing it that way.
All right.
So Yeah, so I guess I'm hearing two different things, and I suppose I'm on board with both, and I imagine they could both be offered to Reverend Manning, write an explanation of our street dedication policy and inviting him to maybe submit another idea of maybe a more like a local influential person in the African American community who has contributed locally, and would fit that policy, or alternatively to kind of bring something that recognizes MLK in a way that's in line with the policy. So it wouldn't be street naming necessarily, but maybe it would be a plaque. So I guess I'm hearing those two different things, and I think that they could maybe both be presented to Reverend Manning as options for moving forward, and invite him to respond back with a letter. He's already sent one. He could send a follow-up.
Andy, do you have sufficient direction?
Yep, that's fine. The next item then is, go ahead, Your Honor.
No, go ahead, Andy. I was just going to say move on.
Okay. So council, so in considering the strategic management planning report from the Pennsylvania Economy League, I think it was the very first meeting in January that we had there was obviously the presentation by PEL staff at the end of the year at our last meeting, I believe, and then we continued some dialogue at our first meeting in January. Councilman Rowe, I think it was you that had asked for some additional benchmark data comparing the city of Meadville against other third-class cities, particularly in our region, and then also against Vernon Township and West Meade Township, our closest neighbors. And so I had distributed to council. There's a lot here. This is a 20-page document. So with the packet, a number of benchmark comparisons, and I don't know, I'd be glad to spend, I don't know if council has the time to review that or has questions, or we could do a quick overview. I don't know, Gary Johnson, are you prepared to do a quick overview?
I mean, we could walk council through. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of insight we're going to provide regarding the numbers, but we could walk them through it. I mean, there's quite a bit there, so.
Council, what's your pleasure? Do you want us to, we could walk through some of these tables and graphs and give a quick, what we think is our quick analysis or snapshot of each one?
Andy, why don't you just do a snapshot of each one? We have this information that, I'm still looking at, but why don't you just highlight it, and then if we have any questions, then we'll give them to you.
Gary, do you have a copy in front of you that you can start?
Sure. So yeah, you're looking here at the first one here, just the basic idea, demographic data. All of these tables have pretty much the same municipalities involved. So if you go through there, the first demographic table there has the median owner-occupied housing value. We're a little bit toward the top end on that. Household income, kind of probably a little bit closer to the lower end on that. And then poverty level, percentage of persons in poverty. We're actually not too bad there. We're kind of in the middle of the pack to the low of the pack there, as far as the actual number or percentage of persons in poverty there. Moving on to housing data. This was an interesting one. And again, it's not, these tables aren't ranked. It's not that Meadville is the number one or in any of these, it's just Meadville is first in these. So, but it's interesting to take away from the housing data here really has to do with the percentage of owner occupied versus renter occupied. And these are census numbers, and you'll notice that the percentage of owner occupied the census has the city at 33%. So 1 in 3 is owner occupied. A little more than half is renter occupied, and then about 15% is vacant is what they had in this. So it's interesting. It's quite a bit more than all the other communities here. I mean, quite a bit more, 10 to 15% more when you look at the difference between owner occupied and renter occupied. And frankly, we're a little bit baffled by that. It's not really because it's a college town, because the vast majority of college kids are actually on campus.
Okay.
I'm assuming it has more to do with the fact that we're social services center, and you can look at some of our demographic data, but it's an interesting table to take a look at there with the housing data. Moving on to market versus assessed. This one I believe was specifically requested, and it has to do with again the market value versus the assessed value, and these are based on DCED, State Department of Community and Economic Development numbers. You'll see Meadville's. You'll see the assessed value at 155 million, the market value at 358 million, roughly results in a ratio of actual to market value of 43.4%. You'll see that in a rough ballpark, all the ones, the first four there, all in Crawford County are within 9 points of each other, and you'll see that that's basically a symptom of the outdated assessment that we're going by in the county. You'll note with Corey, Erie, and Franklin, in Erie County and Venango County, they both more recently had reassessments, which is why their numbers are closer to 100%, which is basically meaning that the market value and assessed value are the same, which can be a good ideal to strive for. But the rest of them, you'll see Warren, Sharon, so Mercer County, Warren County, they both also have some outdated assessments. But it's just an interesting one to take a look at when you're thinking of what is our tax base, what are we basing our millage on. This really kind of goes to that. So we can go to the next one then. Allocation of taxes by taxing authority. This just has to do with how much of your taxes by percentage, how much of a homeowner's taxes by percentage goes to the city versus the school district versus the county. And you'll see there, Meadville is the first column there, 23.5 goes to the city, 22.4 to the county, and 54 to the Crawford Central School District. You'll see across there, you'll see some of the townships in the other areas. Hermitage City, which is really acts more as a township than a city based on how it's been developed, have very low local municipal taxes, which of course in turn triggers a higher proportion of the school district and county taxes, and you'll see that in that table there. So you'll see we're a little bit low compared to some of our colleagues as far as the municipal share. We're at 23%, and you'll see majority of the other cities are higher than the city of Meadville in regard to proportion of local taxes versus other taxing districts. And if you have any questions as we go through, please don't hesitate to ask. This is kind of a quick and dirty kind of run through here. So revenues, this table here talks about specifically the cities, Meadville's revenues, and this is taken from another DCD report based on the audit in 2018. So it's a snapshot from 18. This includes debt service, includes capital projects, general fund. It includes everything. So you'll see here with the debt included, that really jacks up. Our general fund that we look at every year is roughly $10 to $10.5 million is what you council would generally see in approving a budget every year. You'll see that 14.4 also includes enterprise and debt service funds that jack that up to 14.4. And so these numbers here are what were used in the next table or two when comparing to our other communities. And when in this slide here, you'll see that 14 million number carried over under total revenue. And that's the total revenue based on that table that the city brought in, and dividing that out by the last population from 2010 census results in 1,078.66 in revenue per capita, per resident. And you'll see that is the highest. We happen to be first and the highest in regarding total revenue per capita. That includes all revenues. But then going to the next table down, you'll see we're actually, out of all of these, we're the lowest, except for the townships, in taxes per capita. We're down pretty low there. So I guess it's indicative of the diversity of some of the fees and the other revenue sources that we have in the city here. But total taxes are actually only 36% of the total revenue for the city. Okay, so going on to the next one then, real estate taxes specifically, you'll see where we rank. We're kind of in the middle of the pack there. Again, as far as real estate taxes and real estate taxes per capita, so we're 256 per capita for revenue and real estate taxes. Moving down to earned income taxes there, you'll see we're down lower, and that really has more to do with, you know, what is the income, what is the earned income of the residents in the communities. So you'll see Hermitage is a very wealthy community. They have quite a decent amount of their total revenue comes in the form of earned income. So this has more to almost more demographic than any decisions the city government or city council would make on funding sources. It just is what it is.
Gary?
Yes, sir.
Quick question. We're marked at 1/2 of 1%. Is that because we split the other half with the school district?
That's correct.
Now, do you know if Hermitage, Warren, Sharon, if they split theirs, if theirs is really 3.5?
I don't know, but what I can say is that Hermitage, Warren, Sharon, and Franklin are all home rule communities, and they can. Yeah, and they can adjust their EIT more than we can as just a regular third-class optional charter city. Erie, frankly, is not a home rule, and I'm not sure why they're at 1.15. I didn't have a chance to look into that, but they can tax at a higher level of the earned income than we can, which is, of course, is one of the reasons we, suggested that we may want to look into home rule here in the city to try to adjust that and get some flexibility there. But that is, I'm not sure if it's double that or if all the school districts in those communities are still at 0.5% or not. That I don't know.
Thank you.
Yep. So going on to the next one, getting into services here. This is really ranking by. This is the police departments. You'll see we're just at the top of the bottom level there as far as cost per capita, budget per capita. You'll see officers per capita. We're pretty much in line with most of our cohort here. Total budget, but again, we're not the highest. We're not the lowest as far as budget per capita. $128 per capita for the cost of the police department, and in this table here. So if we want to go down, we'll get into some. These are based on just the crime reports that we put in every year. You'll see this is violent crimes, Meadville, not too bad, frankly, considering lower than Corey, Warren, and Sharon. And these are actual numbers. I believe these are 2000. Yeah, this is 2018 data. So not too bad when you look at some of our sister cities here. So we're going to go to the next one. These are property crimes, the same report. Property crimes were 157. Again, we're on the lower side of the total numbers of crimes. Pretty much in the same location as we were in the previous table. This is for fire. Now this is a little bit tougher. It's not exactly apples to apples because you have volunteer combination and fully paid departments, but among the fully paid departments, that's where we are. Basically, there's not really a comparison of budget comparison in this slide here, but it just gives you an idea what the other communities are looking at, how they operate. So the next table is fire spending per capita, and we're again fourth out of all of these, $77 per capita, which I note the highest there, Warren, is $184, Meadville City 77. So it's quite a difference between the first and the fourth there, but that's where we rank in fire spending per capita. Yeah. So any questions on fire? Okay, so moving on to public works. This is a little more difficult from a budgeting standpoint. This is liquid fuel specifically here. This is not ranked by per capita or anything like that. It just basically just lists, you know, the square miles that we have, population, et cetera, gross allocation. It's just the money we get in liquid fuels, all that various communities get in liquid fuels every year.
Gary?
Yes, sir.
I thought Meadville had about 6 square miles. Are we talking about miles of street?
Yeah, I think that's incorrect. Yeah, I think you're right. We're about 4.5 square miles. I'm not sure what, I guess the 51 reel ought to be miles, lane miles. That's a good point. We'll have to make sure that gets tweaked.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. And this is based on population and road miles and lane miles, so that's strictly a calculation, a formula based. PennDOT has on miles and population. That's how much money you get. This is just expenditures. I'm not exactly sure what's in the DCD report. That wasn't broken down, but it just gives you an idea of what, of how we at least reported the DCD spending on streets and highways. We're up there pretty high there. I think that has to do with some decent amount of paving we had done in the last few years.
Yeah, that would definitely, that would have to be our debt-funded paving capital program. This
table is interesting. This has, yeah, it's kind of confusing. So the city is listed there on the left, then the Titusville, and then the county excluding Meadville. I believe, I'm taking a look at that now. It's been a while since I looked at this. I think the county excluding Meadville is just pretty much everything other than Meadville and Titusville. And then you have the boroughs and the second-class townships broken down by revenue, taxes per capita, et cetera. I'm not going to go through all of that, but it gives you an idea essentially by municipal class, how costs are broken down, what costs are, and percentages are for revenue. So I let you go through that. There's a lot of information there to digest. It does not include, as you'll note there on the total there, it does not include water and sewer, but it includes other, pretty much all the other revenues that you might have. This here is just a ranking through every municipality in the county on the real estate millage, the assessed value and the millage rank. You'll see Meadville second to Titusville. You'll see it highlighted there. So that's really just a listing for all 51 municipalities of what the taxes are, what the real estate taxes are in each municipality. That's all that is. And then this moves into some maps, and I believe you've seen all of these before when the PEL staff was here to do the in-person meeting, in-person presentation that showed all of these maps. This one shows the assessed value growth or lack thereof throughout the county. You'll see red is essentially a zero growth, and you'll see a few communities that hit that. That's assessed value growth. You can go to the next one. Market value growth, same thing. If it's red, then there's pretty much no market value growth. You'll see a few of those. Meadville's actually had some 0 to 10% growth in that. This is all 2009 to 2019. So you can go to the next one. This is share of expenditures between different types of expenditures for the city, for Titusville, for everything other than the city and Titusville, for boroughs and for townships. It's similar to the table above. And again, it's just showing by the type of expenditures and how that breaks down for the as a percentage of total expenditures. And I'm not going to go through this too much, but there's a lot of good information there as well to help you kind of get a feel for where we sit among our the other municipalities in the county. And that's just a bar graph showing that what was shown in the table above on this bar graph just shows it for proportionately what we spend in each of those 6 expenditure areas, categories. You'll see a quarter of it is police services, 30% is public works. So you'll see a significant amount is taken up just by those 2 departments themselves. And again, these are just other maps that we've got showing. This one shows population change. We didn't lose as much as others, and we certainly didn't gain as much as others as well. But we're definitely losing population. The next one has to do with housing, age of housing. Housing structures built pre-1940, which is a standard census benchmark. We're 30 to 50% of the housing structures that were built pre-1940. And you'll see again across the county what the other communities are looking at there. With the vacant housing, not as bad as some places. You'll note Bloomfield Township and the Shenangos in the west. Of course, they're community. They're got the lakes there, a lot of cottages, a lot of second homes, things like that. That's why their numbers spiked so much. I mean, they're at 50% or more. That's indicative of those characteristics that they have. Meadville here, we're not awful, but we're, again, as noted earlier, we're at about 15% vacant. That's a decent amount. Something that's is a concern from our perspective. They really need to work on getting that down. Not a lot. I don't think there's a lot of second homes in Meadville, so I think a lot of it has to do with rentals that are looking to be rented that are vacant, and also houses that are maybe up for sale. Again, this is a little bit dated. These numbers I don't think are going to be that high if you were out there today. I think this is down quite a bit. A lot of sales happening, but again, this is This is to show where we are in relation to our other communities in the county. And then going on, a few more maps here. This is poverty. Again, you'll see 4 communities in the county, including Meadville at 20% or more. Again, that just shows the concentrations. And the next slide. This is just comparing it to other select communities. I think we might have seen this before in the earlier version of the report. Just again, taking a look at taxes and shares of revenue with some of the other communities in the cities across the state that are somewhat similar to Meadville. This shows we're pretty much kind of right in the ballpark with the other communities as far as total revenues and other things like that. I think that's just about it.
Yep.
So that was really fast. There's a lot of information there. Andy, I don't know how you want to proceed going forward here.
Well, so Council, obviously, you've received the draft stamp report and have requested this additional information, and certainly you can take the opportunity to digest it further. We want to get to the point relatively soon, however, where we're essentially adopting the final strategic management planning program report, which then allows us then to move on and apply for grant funding, I guess state budget permitting, for certain priorities that we would identify. So with this information, is council maybe prepared to adopt that program maybe at a future meeting, maybe at the March meeting, or do you want another presentation on it? Do you want, what's your pleasure at this point? I know it's a lot to digest.
Andy, will they be presenting a summary of their findings and recommendations once we have all this data?
It's in the report that we've shared, right? There is a summary. Is it its own chapter, Gary? I mean, that brings all of the recommendations into one place from each. And maybe we should spend a few minutes going over that at the next meeting and just sort of summarizing all of those recommendations into one place. We could do that at the next meeting.
That might be beneficial for the public and for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, go ahead, Autumn. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I just, you know, I really don't want to hold this up longer than we have to, right? And I wonder if just like the recording from the meeting where Health presented the summary of their findings, like, could we just resurface that, share that out with council, share it with the public again, so it's fresh in our minds along with this information, and move. Again, I don't want to hold up, especially right when we've got all these other things now, like switching city managers. We've got like a lot going on, and I don't want to drag things out longer than we have to. So I'd be ready to maybe consider it all together if council's ready to do our homework in between.
Yeah, I'd be ready to willing to consider it all too as well.
So why don't at the next meeting, why don't, to Councilwoman Vogel's point, we can maybe dust off that prior presentation. We can focus on the final chapter of the report that is a summary of the recommendations. And either at the next meeting, following that presentation, we can consider a resolution to adopt it or accept it as presented, or do that at the first meeting in April.
Yeah, I think that would be a way to go.
Sounds good to me.
That's fine.
Okay. So maybe Katie, for your planning, let's put the resolution on the next meeting agenda. If council wishes to move, they can. If they want to punt it to the next agenda, they can. But we'll do a presentation we'll sort of dust off the recommendation presentation and then this final chapter, and we'll present that at the next meeting.
Got it.
Okay. So, Your Honor, I think that concludes the manager's report section of the agenda.
Does anybody have any other questions for Andy on the manager's report?
No.
Andy, I had one other thing.
Yes, sir.
I had a phone call today about the incinerator, since we were talking about making things look better, property maintenance. Is there anything going on with cleaning that up? It has broken glass and boarded up, and
I'll need to spend some time since I've talked to Nathan Zazula, Public Works Director, about I think we had blocked some sections up. There were a few things that they had planned to address or maybe had already. So I don't know about broken glass, whatever, but let me follow up with Nathan and see where that stands.
that's fine. Thank you.
I know it is a concern of Westmead Township supervisors and management.
That's who called me.
As council is aware, it's located in Westmead Township, right on near the city line.
Any other questions for Andy?
Council should probably be aware that it's probably an estimated six-figure to demolish if we were to ever to demolish the tower, the incinerator tower.
Andy, because it was a incinerator, I mean, do we have some environmental issues also with that building?
I don't know that there are known issues, but I mean, ultimately, right, one might assume that there could be to be part of, an overall site planning process.
Okay. All right. So under the council's priorities, looks like we're going to be discussing the third part billing. We'll just keep these on. Does any council member want to add to or comment on the priorities?
I guess I will just add here maybe that the city of Meadville was approved as a Vista site, a Vista host site, and that application specifically was geared towards having an AmeriCorps Vista, which is a full-time usually a recent college grad, equivalent of full-time work, but not full-time pay from us. And again, the grant application was focused on them coordinating the home rule charter process, not leading it, right, but coordinating it and maybe doing any research or back-end work. So we were approved, so we'll have a full-time person starting this summer, and that program can be good up to 3 years. So that could potentially see us through that initiative and gives us a little bit of extra person power to see through that piece, and potentially to do work on other recommendations coming out of the strategic management planning program as well.
Okay. Autumn, is that, I take it that you said it's a 3-year program?
Yeah, it can be, right? So we applied. It's just a 1-year commitment that the individual would make. So we might see 3 different people. We might see one person who stays for 3 years, but we were approved for a 3-year to be a 3-year host site. If we continue to stick with the program, and we did incorporate that into our 2021 budget.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Any other comments about the council's priorities? Okay, hearing nothing, we'll move on to old business, authority, boards, and commissions. Katie, can you give us an update on that?
Yes, Your Honor. So we still stand at having the 3 vacancies. I believe the ad hoc committee for the Meadville Area Water Authority decided earlier this week on setting up interviews for next week. So that process is moving along, which would just leave 2 vacancies for zoning hearing board alternates, which we are still working on.
Okay. I believe we're going to have that meeting on the 11th. Is that correct?
Provided that the applicants are available, yes.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on the property maintenance code, Andy.
Yep, Your Honor. So this is just continued discussion from the prior meeting where Gary Johnson reviewed a number of proposed property maintenance code updates. There were particularly 2 sections that I think council was sort of getting stuck on, and we had some more dialogue around that we wanted to revisit with you. One in particular was what we considered the unapproved or improper use of unapproved materials. Gary, do you want to quickly revisit? Do you want to go to the memo? I mean, I've got the memo up that we reviewed last time. Is there a particular section you want to review first before you go into some further review and discussion?
No, I think there were really just those 2 items that were questioned: the onboarding, essentially the onboarding section, and the unapproved materials section. So the onboarding again was, we have the rule that if there's a boarding on a window or a door on a vacant structure, we require it to be unboarded with a proper window and operating door in every opening to be done within 180 days of the date of notice. If that's not taken care of, then it's then taken to court, and the penalty is $300 per opening per day. Right now, of course, that's only on vacant structures, and we would propose that to be expanded to all structures as opposed to just vacant structures. There was some question on that. There was some debate on that, and I just wanted to bring that back to council to see if there was any further thought, if we still wanted to go forward with that. And so then I leave that with council if there's any more consideration or concern about that.
Gary, in the memo itself from last meeting, where specifically is the boarding provision? Trying to scan to find it.
Closer to the beginning. It's on the 2nd page, top of the 2nd.
Where
starts with influence.
Okay, good. All right. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Again, the only change we're talking about is right now it applies to vacant only. We would propose to apply that to all structures, whether vacant or occupied.
I'm comfortable to move forward as
Andy, I have a couple of questions on section 7, or actually minor editorial recommendations. 7A.
Section 7 of what, Jim?
The ordinance for the city of Meadville establishing a blighted property review committee.
Okay, yep. Do they pertain to the property maintenance code specifically, or are you moving on to that agenda item?
They relate to property maintenance code and basically the notice of determination and so forth. I mean,
Okay.
we can move on, but if we're going to discuss the ordinance, I don't know that we're scheduled to pass it. We were just scheduled to discuss it.
Yeah, under new business 10B would be discussion of the blighted property review committee. Do you want to finish the?
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's complete the property maintenance code stuff, and then when we get down there, we can focus on that language.
All right.
Gary, you wanted to do some examples, and so with respect to the unapproved materials examples, right? We were having lots of discussion of what does this mean? What are some examples? You prepared this materials. You want to walk through this?
Sure. There's three main issues that come into play with unapproved materials, and that has to do with basically tarps for roofs, house wrap or tieback for siding, left on there, which siding is supposed to go over, and then essentially plastic or tarps for essentially porch enclosures, if you will. So if you want to go ahead to the next slide. So this is what we're talking about. You'll see this garage here has been prepared for siding. They put the house wrap on, and then they put the strapping on that they would attach the siding to, that vertical wood there that they would attach siding to cover the house wrap. This has been like this for several years, and this is one of the unapproved materials. Tieback or house wrap is not meant to be a permanent siding. It's exposed to the wind and the rain and the sun indefinitely. Supposed to be covered with siding. So this is kind of an example of what I'm talking about when we're talking about house wrap that's used as permanent siding. We can go to the next one. This is an idea of what we're talking about with essentially using plastic to create an enclosed porch, if you will. You'll see on this one that it's come away at the top there on the side. It's also kind of open in the middle there. This is kind of what happens when you put these types of things up. They're oftentimes not maintained. They're oftentimes not held, tight, and it just contributes to a blighted feel in the community. So this is kind of an idea of what we're talking about with a plastic that's being used for essentially closing porches and things like that. And the third one is, again, this is pretty simple, roof tarps. This place has been like this for several months. You'll see the porch or the tarp actually goes over the peak of the roof at the top, and it comes down, is draped across the other peak, the perpendicular peak there on the single story, and goes partly down that. It's been like that for quite a while. You can see there's serious issues with the structure itself as well, but concentrating on the tarp, this has been like this for quite some time, and this change would also target that type of use. So that's kind of a summary of what these look like, what we're trying to take care of that we can't currently take care of. So with that, I'll open that up for council discussion.
Gary, would you go back to the Baldwin Street house for a minute?
Yes,
just so everybody's aware, that plastic was removed today, and they cleaned up around the yard. But the reason I wanted to see that picture is because I've gotten a lot of information, people contacting me when we talk about enclosures, plastic enclosures, tarp enclosures. Some individuals really do say that is for heating, to help with the heating of the home. In this situation on Baldwin Street, you can't convince me that was to provide heat and wind against the house. So that would be totally unacceptable to me, just for the fact that you can see where the wind could just go through that. The people that have contacted me, some of them are concerned when they saw it in the Meadville Tribune that, again, somebody would, in the back of their house, would enclose their porch to store items over the winter. So what I'm wondering, you're almost going to have to use each one of these individually when you go there. Again, this would be unacceptable on the Baldwin Street, but on another picture that was sent to me, you know, they're just storing for the winter months. And also, you know, I just want to make sure that we're not going to hurt somebody that is trying to save on money and heating, but they also have to understand that it has to be maintained. That's my concern. So, and I know we've talked about this over and over, and I'm still not convinced on this. When we talk about property blight maintenance, when we have these officers go to that residence and they see there's a condition there, they knock on the front door and there's somebody living in that house, why can't that individual be given the warning? Because they're the one who created that mess. If it's unlived and no one lives there, then I can see it going back to the landlord. Explain that to me, because I don't grasp that.
Okay. First of all, we typically don't necessarily walk up to and knock on the door. Just in general, we don't generally do that. If we happen to see someone that we could talk to them about it, but generally we don't do that. Second, to get someone's name, it's oftentimes proves difficult to get a name of a tenant. And if we do get a name of a tenant and we're able to identify that that's indeed them, they give us a real name, and we can cite them in that location, they can then just, they can skip town quite easily. So one of the issues is actually getting a good name that we can verify to the court. The second one is that they can just leave at any time. And obviously, you know, they wouldn't have any consequences or necessarily get it taken care of. What we can do, and what we do know, though, is who owns the property, and the owner, of course, is responsible for that as a property owner. That's why we go to the property owner itself. I mean, that's fairly typical in code enforcement. It's typically the property owner that's held responsible, not a tenant, not someone else, because it's often very difficult, especially with multiple family structures, duplexes, 3-family, whatever, in determining who exactly is doing what. The property owner could easily say, well, that's not my junk, that's this guy's. And then one of the tenants can say, it's not mine, it's this guy's. And we have no way to prove any of it. So the way we have to do it expeditiously and actually accurately is that we have to basically put the property owner, you know, on notice and say, you're responsible for maintaining your property. I mean, they're the ones that property owners, and speaking again as a landlord, the property owners are the ones that reap the benefit from the property, but they also have the responsibility to maintain it properly. So by holding the landlord responsible, the landlord can then, there's nothing stopping the landlord from going to the tenant and saying, get this taken care of via a lease. And if they don't get it taken care of, then, you know, essentially evict them if they don't get it taken care of. That's why we go after the property owner itself, because they're the ones that we can actually hold accountable and essentially prove that they are responsible via the ordinance to say, you know, this is your property, you are responsible for it. There's a violation, it wasn't taken care of, you're guilty. It far exceeds our capacity and our resources to try to track down anybody that other than the owner that might be responsible. That's why we do that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point, Gary. I think maybe to Leroy's first point, right? I similarly might share concerns with folks who are relying on, you know, taking extra measures against cold weather, right, to save on heating or whatever. I think we talked last time, potentially, right, about connecting, or maybe just, right, it's my understanding, I think, right, that the first notification they get is not, there's not a fine or penalty attached, but it's more like a warning. And maybe if within that, if that's correct, within that there can be resources to Northwest Weatherization, local entities that help facilitate that process, and then maybe also the United Way critical home repair. I'm thinking specifically in instances like the roof that you showed, right, where if it's in the it's the case that it's a low-income homeowner, they might qualify for some help. And I think that, right, if we're able to like connect people to the resources that they would need to take care of some of these things, I think that it would benefit the neighborhood, to all of the neighborhoods in our community, to move forward and take some of these measures. And it sounds like it would help code enforcement as well.
So now is that going to be left up to the tenants to reach out for these services or loans, or is that going to be up to the landlord?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in my understanding, right, is that the landlord or the landowner, the homeowner, would get that notification, and then it's up to them, right, if they're going to take advantage of those services or pass those services on to their tenants. I would hope that they would. I don't know how we make a more direct connection. It would be great if we can, but as Gary mentioned, it sounds like our capacity is shot. So I imagine it would just be included in that kind of initial letter, and you know, we would, I don't know, potentially maybe there could also be a request, right, that like those resources be passed along to the appropriate, you know, the appropriate kind of whoever the property is in the care of.
I think, this is Gary, to address a couple of things there. We can certainly maintain a list of resources. I don't think we're going to put it in the notice itself. We could maintain a list of potential resources they could call. I hesitate to make any kind of recommendation for any service at all, and just because they may take that as a, you know, essentially a recommendation or an order to say you have to talk to these people, or we suggest you do that because we think they do good work. Because frankly, I don't want to recommend one thing over the other. We could maintain a list of resources for sure regarding that, so we can do our best if they reach out and say we need help, then absolutely have that list. But to the initial point about the notice going out before we find people, I do want to note again the process begins with a notice of violation, and all it is a letter saying you're in violation, this is how you're in violation, this is what you need to do to get it taken care of, and this is the time frame that you have to get it taken care of. And if it isn't taken care of in that amount of time and no extensions are requested, then a citation would go to the judge, and the judge is the only one that can assess a fine. No costs, no fines, nothing happens until there is a hearing before the judge, and the judge finds guilt. I just want to make clear on that the city doesn't fine people. In the notice is a violation, always give an opportunity to get everything taken care of prior to going to that point. We're not looking for money, you know, we're really just looking for compliance. That's always the goal of code enforcement.
Gary, would you say the majority of the houses that are in blight are rental properties, or a combination of rental and ownership? Because ownerships I would assume they can apply for assistance, you know, through weatherization and things. I'm just curious if you know that, if you'd even have that information.
I don't have it. I would say anecdotally, and using majority as 51%, I would argue that yes, a majority would be investment or rental properties as opposed to owner occupied. I don't have those numbers, but I would suspect in my experience that the majority would be rentals.
Okay, so let's jump back real quick when we talk about the enclosures of porches and stuff. Didn't we not talk that we could also, if people are using it to save on heating, the cost of heating, could we just put that, you know, just like studded tires, you can use the plastic as long as it's not torn, and the wind can't get through. Same as tires. April 15th, the plastic comes off. Is that something that we could work with?
We talked about that last week. I had mentioned that we should be able to work with the tenants and residents and give them time period to take that off.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering, I mean, I hate to say it that way, but using the studded tire as an example, usually by April 15th, the weather's pretty much breakable, and well, look at today, a beautiful day. Doesn't mean we're not going to get more snow, but the possibilities of it getting really cold is going to be less. Would that be something that would be workable, Gary?
We can absolutely do that, but I guess what I'll say is it kind of defeats the purpose of that specific code section, because I would say 95% of the time you're going to see that in the winter. So if we want to allow it in the winter, that's fine. I just want to put that caveat out there. So I guess the difference would be that we need to make sure that everything is maintained. Nothing is flapping in the breeze. Nothing is falling down. So long as it's nice and tight, you can have that up.
Right.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary. I think that if it should meet some type of inspection or something. We just don't want someone throwing something up there and it looks terrible. Like the house next to up by Leroy's, that the way they had it is just terrible. I wouldn't want, even though they may say it's for helping with heat, it's not. So I think maybe if we even went further with this to say this is the guidelines that that it can be applied to. This is how it has to look, or something, to encourage them to make it look as neat as possible.
Gary, what is the time frame for the offense to exist? Is it 180 days or is it less?
It depends on the specific code section. So there's some that are 180 days, but the vast majority of the standard time frame is 25 days.
Would this one be an example of 180 days or 25?
It's not established, but as written, it would be 25 days.
All right. Are we ready to move forward to another meeting on this?
Well, I'm sorry, Jim. I was muted. Gary, would you go to the house that's wrapped, please?
Sure. Tyvek?
Yeah, there you go. So you said that's been sitting like that for 5 years now?
I don't know how many years, but it has been multiple years.
And I take it that's in a residential area?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm just curious. I understand that's not acceptable. It looks like a garage. Is that what it is? I mean, I have no idea.
Yes.
It's a garage.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So there's no heat going on in there. So there would be, I mean, that's just neglect of not finishing a project.
Not necessarily.
I'm not sure what's going on inside.
I suspect that by not finishing the exterior, it may not go on the tax rolls yet. That may be the motivating factor. I'd have to check on that.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to pick apart every picture that you have, but I understand what you're talking about. Those situations we need to correct. I mean, that's not someone living in there. It's not providing energy to heat that, as far as I can see. There's no windows in it. So go to the next picture with the roof. I'm just looking at these. Okay. Is someone living in that house now?
I don't believe so, but I don't know for sure.
It's on Lincoln Avenue.
Yeah, actually, there's someone that is working on that. I've seen people in and out of there during the day. I don't know if they're living there or not.
Yeah,
It
so
has
I just
serious
want to make the point, right?
trouble.
Yeah, so my understanding, right, is not that we're, just as Leroy said, we're not picking apart these individual instances. and we've spent a lot of time on this already. I guess I just also want to be clear, like what I'm hearing us asking of Gary is to draft a revised proposal for plastic enclosures. And my understanding of what that would mean is that Gary would draft that up, would bring it potentially to the next council meeting, and we'd spend like yet another conversation. And who knows if we would get it right? Who knows if we would take action or not? I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that at that point, we will have spent 3 council meetings talking about this. We've got like a lot going on. This is not listed in our priorities. I know Jim's all about our priorities that we've laid out. So I guess and especially like coming down the pike, we've got a lot of changes and a lot of
I understand what you're saying, but to people living in those houses or that's going to be facing these, it's just as serious to them as our priorities. So I want to make sure that we all have a clear understanding of what we're asking, and if we're not asking something, putting more of a burden on someone by holding them accountable. If you know, that's why we're asking these questions, so we have a good understanding.
Yep, I totally hear you, Larry. And I think that's where I was coming from in terms of like making resources available to people so we can like have our cake and eat it too. We can like kind of lighten our communities, make them look nicer, and also give people the resources they need to stay warm, to not spend all of their money on their heating bill, right? And to maybe get the critical roof repairs that they need and things like that.
And I agree with you. I think what Gary's proposing, I like it, and I agree with what you're saying, Autumn. Let him propose, get this out there, and then he said that they would make a list of different places they could go to get the services. I agree that I don't want to spend much more time than we already have on it. We got to make the people, the landlords and the tenants, more responsible. So I'm in agreement. I think, Gary, go ahead, do what you're planning on doing. We have a guideline that the people have to follow. We have resources that they can go to get this work done. I say let's do that and let's move on.
The only thing I'm going to say is that when we do ordinances and we do decisions on individuals, I don't care how much time it takes. I want to make sure that we do it right. That we don't make an ordinance that 2 years down the road we're going to say, oh wow, why did we do that? Or in some of these cases, I just want to make sure that we're trying to see this and looking at it. So, Gary, bring back what you need.
I think that by Gary's saying, okay, this is what we're going to need. Also, here is the agencies or places that can help you. We're doing that. We want to get rid of the blight in Meadville. And people, sometimes you got to push a little harder to make people do things. This is something I don't see as in the future saying, gosh, we shouldn't have done that. I understand the point you're trying to make, but this is something it's basically cut and dry. This is what we allow. This is what we don't allow. If you're having problems with this is the agency to go to. And that's it in a nutshell. We've got this blighted problem. We know is one of the major setbacks to drawing businesses to your town. So the quicker we address this, then we can move on and maybe start saying, hey, look what we've done. Look how our town looks. Come think about putting your business here.
Does that give you guidelines?
Well, just to be clear, it sounds like the only issue is the plastic used for essentially for porches, and it sounds like what council wants to do is me to come back with something written to allow it in some kind of winter month, maybe during the heating season, if you will, and as long as it's tidy and neat and doesn't look too bad, then we permit it during those times. Is that correct?
Correct. And Gary, I have a question along that line. Is there some type of plastic that like a Biscayne, a certain ply Biscayne that would work, that's, you know, neat in appearance, that, you know, they're only allowed to use instead of the blue or whatever colored cheap tarps that gonna rip up with, you know, if there's something, you know, that would hold, I trust your judgment in that. If there was something you could say, look, I recommend this be used, or this can only be used as covering.
Well, we can't go on the property, so we couldn't determine what type of plastic it would be. I mean, we could say it has to be clear or something,
Right.
but I don't know if we want to get to that level. If we're going to allow it, we should probably just allow it. I don't know how else to write it up to, you know, to say the tarps are not okay, but plastic is, you know. That's a tough one from an enforcement standpoint.
Okay.
Well,
So I can write something up and bring that back.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Thank you very much.
I guess what I was getting at was, right, I'm comfortable with what you've drafted already. I don't know where the rest of council stands, but that's my opinion.
Sean, you have any comments? Jim?
I trust Gary's judgment on this stuff. If it's something wrong dramatically, I agree with Leroy. I don't want to come back and fix it, but we'll find out pretty fast that people don't like it. As far as the plastic on the porches, I use my garage as a refrigerator a lot in the wintertime, and I'm sure that's what some of these people are doing, but it does look terrible. Now, these tarps on the roofs, I can see that as a temporary fix, but I don't think that should be permanent. And they just put this tarp on there last year on that roof. And the Tyvek, I don't think it should be permanent. I don't know that 180 days is long enough, but it does get shredded off and looks terrible at times. I would take what we got now. It's fine with me.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I'd said earlier, I'm ready to move forward with it.
Okay, Gary, if you can bring back the changes, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, what changes are we making? We're allowing for plastic. We're allowing for tidy looking plastic enclosures in the winter. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that the changes?
That was the thing that I was concerned with.
Okay, it just wasn't clear to me what the next steps were. So I'm scared. If it's clear to you, then God bless you.
You clear, Gary, or do you need more explanation?
Well, it sounded to me like 3 members of council are okay with how it was presented today, and 2 council members wanted to change it to allow it in the winter. So that's kind of where I am at the moment. I'm more than happy to write it up to allow it in the winter, but I'm not sure I'm getting a consensus one way or the other.
Okay, so you had been under the impression that you were going to bring back to us next time an ordinance with the drafted changes as you had already proposed. It did not allow the plastic in the winter.
I'll up until Councilman Councilman Roa spoke, I thought there were 3 to 2 or at least 3 members that wanted to rewrite it to allow it in the winter. Right now, I'm not clear.
Well, let's get it clear. Sean, do you want him to rewrite it so they're allowed to have plastic during the winter months?
No, that's fine. It's fine the way it is now.
Okay, Larry, your feelings?
Yes.
Yes, and what?
Allow it for the winter months.
Okay. Jim?
I'll go with allowing for the winter months.
Autumn.
Oh man, I would want to see us move forward as presented.
So my understanding, we got 3 that wants the change made, Gary. Am I correct on that?
If you're for the change, that's correct.
Bring me the change. Us the
Sounds
change.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Under new business, we have an ordinance, first and second reading, amending Article 1503 of the Fire Prevention Code. Katie.
Ordinance of the City of Meadville, Pennsylvania, amending Part 15 of the Municipal Code of the City of Meadville entitled Fire Prevention Code, and repealing Article 1503 entitled Fire Prevention Code, and replacing it with a new Article 1503 entitled Fire and Rescue Services Fees.
Motion for the first reading.
I make a motion, first reading, be accepted.
I'll second.
Second. Okay. Discussion, Andy?
Council, so the ordinance before you is the only change from the draft that you reviewed last meeting, the only material change. We had made a minor change just for clarity, but didn't change any content. So the only change before you, based on recommendation and discussion of council last meeting, is a new proposed Article 1503.05, establishing a capital reserve fund with the proceeds. And I'll scroll to it on our screen here. This is the new section. So just a reminder, right, this would be an ordinance that allows for the collection of fees with respect to certain fees with respect to motor vehicle accidents, structure fires, et cetera, which are on a sort of a menu-based delivery of services, and a fee structure based on those services would be billed to insurance companies only. The ordinance, however, allows to recover costs from in places where there's fire alarms or where there's an intentional cause. So a arson, motor vehicle accident resulting from DUI, causing a false fire alarm, or environmental incidents related to illegal drugs or hazardous materials, those could be billed individually. But the new section of the ordinance is this 1503.05, the capital reserve, which reads, all net proceeds received from fees collected pursuant to this ordinance shall be deposited into a dedicated fund to be named the City of Meadville Fire Department Capital Reserve Fund. This fund may be used solely for the acquisition of firefighting and rescue apparatus, which shall be defined as those vehicles used specifically for extinguishing or containing fires and or rescue purposes. Such acquisition to include payments for borrowing, leasing, or as matching grant funds directly related to the acquisition of said apparatus. So again, any proceeds will be dedicated to a vehicle fund to be used either for direct acquisition, lease payments, or as matching grant funds.
Andy, are we including the fire and revenue service fee schedule with this ordinance?
So you would adopt it separately by resolution. That's how this ordinance is structured. So, so I would propose that you only do that on third and final reading. But it's the same fee structure that we had reviewed from the consultant. Jim, you had questioned, and I'll present. So I'm not proposing that we adopt the fee schedule tonight.
Right.
We would do that. I would propose that we do that on third and final reading at the next meeting. You had questioned the false alarm fee that you want us to revisit, and I do have data from Chief Wiley that I'll share with council and a recommendation from him that might change that false alarm fee schedule. So I'll present that at the next meeting when we go to review and adopt that fee schedule.
All right, thank you.
Any questions for Andy? Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. Motion for the second reading?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Donahue,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Roa,
Aye.
Vogel,
Aye.
Stearns.
Aye. Discussion draft ordinance blighted property committee. Andy?
Yep, so Your Honor, I'm going to, in a second, I'll turn this over to Mary Ann, who is on the line. And so, Council, I think it was probably back in January that we came to you to discuss sort of 2 additional proposed tools in our blighted property toolbox, and how to best sort of manage them and move them along towards redevelopment or sometimes, you know, maybe acquisition, rehab, demolition, but at least move them along the continuum of the blighted property remediation. So one of those tools was recommended the Blighted Property Review Committee. Mary Ann had sort of given a quick overview of those. So Mary Ann, would you kind of revisit that? And so what's before you is just a draft ordinance. We're not proposing first or second reading tonight. But Mary Ann, would you quickly go over how a Blighted Property Review Committee would work, and then any particular tenets of this ordinance that you'd like to point out to council?
Sure. So the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Act allows for this creation of a Blighted Property Review Committee. So as I discussed in January, this statute certifies via a separate committee from either City Council or the Redevelopment Authority that a property is considered to be blighted. Now, this property has to fit one of the 11 criteria in the statute to be considered blighted, and the property must be vacant as well, so we aren't, you know, evicting occupants of the building. So in the draft ordinance, you'll see under the composition of the committee, it currently states that it must contain 1 member of council appointed by council. It says 2 representatives of the Redevelopment Authority appointed by the authority, a representative of the Meadville City Planning Commission appointed by the commission, and a representative of the executive branch of city government appointed by the city manager. Now, the statute mandates that it's 1 member of council, 1 member of the Redevelopment Authority, 1 member of the Planning Commission, and essentially 1 member of city staff on this committee. As council is aware, a 5-member committee is much more effective than a 4-member committee. So that 5th member is currently proposed to be another member of the Redevelopment Authority, as theoretically they would be familiar with the blighted properties just due to the monthly meetings from the Redevelopment Authority. But it is possible that it could be a member of the community or another member of another city board or commission. And I know that Councilmember Roa, under Section 7, Notice of Determination, had a discussion about wanting a constructive notice addition to that section. And I think we were going to discuss it with Elizabeth, the state solicitor, to see what kind of language we could use to fit in. There's no such language mandated in the statute, but we could certainly add something of that nature.
Mary Ann, I have another question on Section 7A, service by certified mail. Could or should we change that to or first-class mail as opposed to and?
So Elizabeth probably has better insights, but typically the best practice legally is to serve via both certified and first-class mail. I don't know if Elizabeth has any other suggestions.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just, Boyce, I know that I had reached out to you, Marianne, in terms of the composition of the committee as proposed, mainly just in response to community residents reaching out and having interest in serving, and seeing it potentially as a good opportunity to do that. I won't fight too hard on it, but I do think that there is interest from the community should we open up one of those 2 spots that's kind of currently reserved for RDA members, as it's written.
And we can do that if that's what council chooses. That's fine. We can make that change. Does council have an opinion on if they want to keep it as written with 2 representatives of the redevelopment authority, or appointment of a community member?
Marianne, this is Larry. I think a community member would be great.
Okay.
And I don't know that it matters if it's Andy. Ooh. I don't know what's that.
I think it might be Elizabeth or Larry.
Okay, no crash there. So, so I think the only, so I mean, I would argue that it, oh, wow. That might just be a random WebEx thing. I would argue that, I mean, so a member of the redevelopment authority, right, is essentially a member of the community. If we're adding a sort of a general seat to the community, right, that's another application process, another interview process, another, I mean, it's council's will, right? But it's another, I'll say it, as much as we might want to do that, it's also another administrative burden of another position to fill and process to conduct. When if it's another member of the authority, they will have already gone through that process. And so.
Yeah, Andy, how many times are we expecting to do this? Not very often, I'd imagine.
To do what?
You know, it doesn't seem like it would be a committee. It's not like we populate a new committee with each property we're going after, right? This committee would stand for some time, so we go through that appointment process.
As written, it's 2-year terms, right? So you'd be every 2 years. You'd be, you know, council's policy allows someone sitting to, but yeah, it's a 2-year term.
I guess it depends how quick you want to move on this. If you want to move on it quickly, we should just go ahead and leave the redevelopment, have the 2 seats. If you want to take the process out for a longer period of time, then we can go through the appointment process. So what's council want to do? Larry?
Well, I mean, I understand that you want to move on it, but then again, on the other side of that coin, you know, we're talking about getting the community involved in decisions and all that, especially in their neighborhoods. So, you know, I don't see nothing wrong with having someone from the community involved with it.
Okay. Sean?
I would argue that every member that's on there is a member of the community. I mean, a member of council is a community member. In my book. I'd rather use what you got now, and if it don't work, then you can always add another person. It's only a 2-year term.
Yeah, but you know, I understand what you're saying, Sean. But are the ones that are on there? Do they live in those areas, those blighted areas? I think that makes a difference. When, you know, I know when you go into someone else's neighborhood trying to tell them what you think is best, that doesn't go over well when you have someone from that neighborhood that is also supporting that or wanting to see that. I think you have a better chance of getting your point across and help and letting them feel a part of change. You know.
But Larry, if there are 10 different blighted neighborhoods and you only have one person from one blighted neighborhood, you haven't really changed anything.
No.
You still have the issue.
No, I disagree with your analogy. If you're from a blighted neighborhood, I don't care if it's on the east side or west side, you still know how that other person feels. If you don't live in a blighted neighborhood, how are you gonna have any feel or tell me how you feel about it or how to make changes in my neighborhood if you don't even live there? But if you have someone that lived there, they can at least sympathize with someone else in that same similar neighborhood. And that person in the neighborhood that you're going to will receive it better from someone that's from the same situation or similar situation as they are or have been.
That's no different than a zoning ordinance, where you have a zoning ordinance for the entire community and you don't have representatives from each and every neighborhood.
I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way. I know personally, I would receive someone coming in telling me that this looks bad or that this is what we're going to do when they live in that neighborhood. They have a vested interest in that, seeing that neighborhood as well as other people. You come into my neighborhood telling me that you want to change this or this looks bad. First thing I'm going to do is turn my nose up at you, because who do you think you are coming in here telling me that my neighborhood doesn't look as good as yours or does, you know? And that's the way people think. That's the way things. You solve that problem by having someone from that area, from that neighborhood talk or with you. That's my opinion. You do however you want, but that's what I would do. That's the way I would do it. You're saying you want to represent people, or you want people to have representation and a voice, and it's very simple. Just put someone from the community on and move on with it. You don't have to all this dialogue back and forth. We want to show transparency. What better way to do it?
Autumn?
Yeah, Larry, I love you. Thanks for making this fight. I appreciate the things that you're saying. I agree with you 100%. Again, I think I introduced this by saying this isn't the thing I'm going to fight on. This isn't the hill I'm going to die on. And so I think that the important thing is that we have this blight review committee. And so if that means we move through with the committee as plotted out, then I think that's great. And we just work to get representative samples on our board's authority.
All right, my question is, if we do appoint another citizen, the process time is going to be how long? About a month?
I mean, no, much longer than that. You have to advertise, receive, create a subcommittee, schedule. It'll be 3 months probably.
3 months to extend this if we go to take it to the public, correct?
Estimated, yeah, at least.
I guess, Mary Ann, my question to you, if the public wants input, how do they go about getting the input to us?
Well,
Would there be a process for that?
So the meetings of the Blighted Property Review Committee, just due to the Sunshine Act, would have to be made public. And it wouldn't be just a one-time meeting discussion. So about a certain property. So the public could tune into those meetings similarly to what they do here. And then, provide written comments or hopefully by the time the committee's formed, we could possibly appear in person, something of that nature.
So we can go ahead. Here's my thing, Larry, just so you know. If these meetings are going to be open to the public, which they're going to have to be, you're exactly right. The public are going to be able to come in and make comments. So if we're going into someone's neighborhood, they have the ability to come to this committee. Am I correct on that?
Yes, they could attend a meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and accept it the way it's written, so we don't have to go through the 3 months, because the public will still have an opportunity to come in and voice their concern from their neighborhood. And as long as that's understood, then I'm going to go ahead and say, have the RDA have their 2 members, and the public can certainly come to these meetings and voice their concern. Does that give you the direction?
Yeah.
Never mind.
All right, go ahead, Larry.
Voicing your concern and having a vote are 2 different things. Just leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Any other thing on that?
So is that a majority to leave it as written?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No.
Okay. So, Your Honor, that was just discussion. So the next, we would then tee this up then for your next meeting as a first and second reading, I believe, with respect from an ordinance perspective. So then the next tool that we had talked about was the establishment of a land bank. And there's also a draft ordinance here as well, which obviously is a different tool, has a different purpose. This one, as Mary Ann will report, there's some ongoing dialogue because there's opportunities for collaboration and partnership with both the county and the treasurer's office and the school district. But Mary Ann, would you revisit for us similarly what a land bank is, how it works, how it's structured, and an update with respect to conversations with the school district and county?
Sure. So the land bank, we can develop a land bank and appoint the current redevelopment authority board as the board of directors for this land bank. The goal of a land bank is to help eliminate some of the vacant properties that are abandoned or tax delinquent, and actively work on getting those properties either bundled together into a different development project, and get those returned to the tax roll as quickly as possible rather than sitting in tax claim or something of that nature. So the city has had some discussion. Well, I should first say that the redevelopment board has seen the draft ordinance that's in front of you at their February meeting and has blessed that ordinance to move forward from their perspective. So the city's engaged the county and school district in discussion because the county can play a role when it comes to judicial sales, where the redevelopment authority board, acting as the land bank, can come and purchase properties prior to a judicial sale with contingent upon an agreement with the county. Also, the county and school district, once those properties are returned from the land bank to the tax rolls, either by sale to a private seller or a private buyer or a developer, for up to 5 years, the school district and county will relinquish 50% of the aggregate tax revenue, up to 50% of the aggregate tax revenue, back to the land bank, so the land bank could go on and acquire different properties to do the duties of a land bank. So March 8th, there's just a meeting scheduled between the school district and the county commissioners to discuss, and the city and the redevelopment authority to discuss what the purpose of the land bank is, how it will be beneficial for everybody involved, and to answer any questions that the county or school district may have.
Mary Ann, could you clarify section 10C? For the duration of time a property is held, the authority can abate all real estate taxes and other municipal charges by the city of Meadville. Does this apply or not apply to school and county taxes?
Let's see. I would say, and Elizabeth can chime in here if she wants to, that it would just be the city taxes.
All right, which would be a small portion of it. It would be something. Thank you.
Correct.
I think I'm excited to see this come in front of us. I think that a land bank is a really great tool. I've seen other communities use them really creatively, and I hope we can as well. The one thing I think we might consider under Section 8 acquisition of property, right now it stipulates that owner-occupied homes, that it would be the policy of the authority to show a preference for keeping the former owner occupants in their homes whenever feasible. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to do a similar thing with renter occupied homes that might end up in this, if the tenants themselves could have the kind of right of first purchase or something, right? If that could be the policy, obviously, right, where that's not, where that purchase is not feasible, that's the land bank wouldn't be bound to that. But I think especially with the high renter rate we see, that might could even help to flip some of those renter to owner percentages.
So we can certainly do that. So there's this ordinance, and then council will be asked at a later date to adopt just land bank policies, and that could be included in such a policy. I will say I'm not certain how many instances of that situation or even the owner-occupied situation we would run into. Typically, we would get them out of judicial sale where they would be vacant, and then also if somebody is going to give the redevelopment authority a home, those typically are also vacant, but they can certainly be addressed in the policies that council would be asked to adopt.
That sounds great.
Miriam, I've got one other question. The property can be acquired through donation, gift, purchase, or any other legal means. Would the land bank be a 501c3 corporation so that donors can take advantage of tax provisions?
I'm not certain on that. I say no would be my initial reaction. Elizabeth, do you happen to have any idea?
So Elizabeth she has no audio via computer or phone. So in her chat box, she's noted that I just found those notes. So she's not able to answer that question. I will only share, Jim, in research that I've done, and it is not specific to land banks by any means, that even donations to the city can be tax deductible under certain instances. So I think I don't know, we'll need to investigate that.
All right.
obviously it's not a legal opinion, obviously, but my understanding would be that for an organization to be deemed 501c3, right, there's that's quite a process of incorporation at the state and the federal level. And I imagine that the land bank would not go through that process to be its own entity in that way, if I understand how this works.
Yeah. So in this case, Marianne, so you've talked about the meeting coming up here with school district and city staff, and so representatives of the county, city staff, and the school district. This will not be, I don't suspect this one will be on your agenda yet for first and second reading in terms of moving forward. We'll have to assess after that meeting, and unless you have a different take on that, Marianne.
I don't. The only thing that I would say is that it would be fantastic to have the county and school districts on board prior to the ordinance passing, but it's not a necessity. There's no language within the draft ordinance committing the county or school district to anything at this point, and many municipalities passed the ordinance prior to a formal agreement with their county or school district.
Okay, so we'll update you after that next meeting.
Okay. So we're going to move on to D then?
Yes.
Good.
So council, this is further discussion or new discussion with respect to a contemplated agreement with other municipalities with respect to the provision of code enforcement services. So I had, in prior notes to council, I had indicated that staff, particularly Gary Johnson, was working on this. Obviously, finding code enforcement officers is a challenge for many smaller municipalities, certainly who don't have the same level of blight or density that we have. And with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Gary for sort of how this came about and where we think this could head. Gary. You are muted.
Sorry about that. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So, right, as Andy said, there's a lot of, there's a few communities out there that I know specifically had some issues finding code enforcement officers. And so I was thinking, maybe we can, work with them, help them out, and at the same time help to maybe supplement a little bit of our code enforcement services in-house. I know there's maybe some issues with CDBG funding for that moving forward, so I was trying to find a way to make it a little more sustainable. So I reached out to a few of the communities. They did indicate their interest and asked that we put something together for their consideration. And that's what would be before you today. There's two items. The first one is the Code Enforcement Services Agreement that is based largely upon actually two different documents. One of them is a Fire Services Agreement regarding third-party billing, and another one was from a code sharing service in the central part of the state. All that said, Elizabeth and I had gone through this and basically puts it together that says the city will conduct a code enforcement based on the municipality's ordinance for a set fee per hour plus mileage plus postage. And that would include everything from inspection, taking complaints from the community, not directly from, I don't envision it as taking it directly from complainants, but mainly directed by the community themselves. When they get calls or see something, they call us. We would go out, inspect, take pictures, send a notice, follow up inspections, and file the citation or the private criminal complaint based on what the local ordinance says. Would follow through with that. All legal services would be the responsibility of the municipality, so we would work with their solicitor essentially on their behalf. and it's pretty much, we try to keep it as simple as possible, going with an hourly rate as opposed to an a la carte, if you will, or a menu of services. Going to that rate, you also had the rate in front of in your packet. We base the rate on essentially a blended rate of our deputy city clerk, which does most of the mailings and records management for the code enforcement, and a property maintenance inspector himself or herself. And you'll see that here, that hourly rate, that first item is $18.39. Just for ease of my tiny brain doing the math, added in a little bit overhead for ink, overhead, paper, etc. of $161 to bring it to $20 is the total cost to the city. Proposed rate of $30 per hour to make it more worthwhile for us to do. That's pretty much where we are. It is fairly simple. We're talking right now with 4 different communities. I don't anticipate it to be much of a heavy volume, and I think it's something we could, I say that and I'll probably get bit by that, but I think we can handle that with the 2 property maintenance inspectors that we will have once we get the other one back on board. So that said, again, it's an opportunity to help out those communities. They have a need. We have an opportunity to help maybe, again, help to make the code enforcement a little bit more self-sustainable. And also, just basically work together, I think, which is always a good goal to have between municipalities and the county. So
Gary?
With that, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No problem.
The hourly rate, does that include the employer's contribution to Social Security and Medicare and unemployment benefits and so forth?
That is the total hourly cost, the blended cost between the 2. So one of those 2 has benefits, the other one does not. It accounts for the benefits of that individual that, essentially Katie, I'll say that. Okay. But it's a blended rate between the 2 that is the total cost to the city for that employee.
And will under this agreement, will we be charging driving time to the other municipality? Because technically the employee is on our clock and could be subject to incidents or accidents.
Yes, it would be door to door. So from the time we leave till the time we get back. And of course, there is mutual indemnification language in there that Elizabeth could speak to better if she could speak to us. That said, there is mutual indemnification, so that there's that there as well. But it would be door to door, to your question.
And if, for example, if a code enforcement officer were going to another municipality and exceeded straight time hours for the day and was on overtime, would that municipality be billed for the overtime?
That's a good question. We don't typically have overtime issues with our part-timers. I'm not sure how that would play out. Really the restriction we have on our part-timers is we basically say up to 29 hours a week. And I suppose what we would do in that case is adjust by the end of the week. If they're going to be over, then we'll have to reschedule some inspections so that they're not over that time. I'd have to do a little more research on how that might apply with part-timers.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, I have a question. Is this going to take away from our enforcement within the city?
No. Right now, before Brian left at Thanksgiving, we had 2 part-timers that each worked about 20 hours a week, 25 maybe. So there's some extra time there that they could work if they wanted to. Up to, again, another 8 or 9 hours a week, if you will, that could be worked. So I think there's capacity there. The best way to put it is, we're paying for a certain level of service right now based on how much they work. And this would essentially be in addition to the work that they do in the city, as opposed to instead of the work they do in the city. So no, it shouldn't take away. I don't think there's going to be that level it's not like another Meadville level of service. It's not going to be that many based on my understanding of how they are in those communities. It's not going to be, 5 or 10 a week. It's going to be maybe 5 or 10 a month of notices and things like that. So it's not a huge number. So I don't think it's going to take away. But that said, we don't know until we do it.
Okay, and I take it they use our vehicles since they're our employees. And they're covered under our workman's comp.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary? Okay. Anything else to go, Gary, or is that it?
Well, if council bless the concept, then what I would do next is go to those municipalities, give them the information that you had before you, see what their thoughts are, and then eventually come back to council potentially for adoption of the agreement and the fee schedule, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we are now. If council's okay for me to reach out to those other communities with these documents, then that's what we'll do next.
I'm okay with you doing it as long as our enforcement is kept up.
I'm okay with it.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
I'm in favor. Yep. And I'll just note, Elizabeth said in the chat, it's just an agreement. It'll be accepted by council by resolution. It can therefore be modified as needed from time to time.
Right, and there's an out clause in it too. You'll note in the agreement it's an out clause of 60 days anyway. So,
okay.
I'm okay, Gary. Gary, I just had a question. When you were inspecting rental properties in Sagertown, was that through the city, or are you doing that, I don't know, by yourself? Remember you came and inspected a property once?
Correct. That's on the side. That's not through the city.
Wondering.
Yep.
Okay, this is separate.
Yep.
It's Gary's hobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just work all the time, Gary.
That's right. What else is there to do?
Yep.
Thank you, council.
Okay, it sounds like you have the majority. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Discussion communication to Senator Toomey and Casey regarding the relief bill. That's on the agenda. Autumn, I can turn it over to you, or how do you want to do that?
Sure. I had just sent around to council a drafted letter, the most recent COVID-19 relief package is passed through the House and is going in front of the Senate this week. And there's, as was indicated in the Washington Post article that I sent around, there is some concern that some of the Democratic senators might cut the funding that's proposed for state and local governments as part of that COVID-19 relief package. And so, this is not a direct plea for funds. Rather, this is a letter to be sent to our own representatives in the Senate to show support for direct for maintaining the allotted amount of direct funding for state and local governments. That's what I got to say about it. There was some concern over sending it to Toomey. If we wanted to send it to Senator Casey, that works for me. Again, there are other municipalities sending letters of support in this way. And it doesn't hurt to advocate for money to come to local governments when we really need it.
Just to pick up where Autumn was at, and you can help me with this. I think it was back in April, as a mayor of the city, I addressed letters. I know one went to Bob Casey asking for support for municipalities, and especially the city of Meadville. Autumn has asked for this to be mailed out. I'll have no problem putting it with the city. If each council member wants to sign it, send it out. I think the more signatures, it might get more recognition. And like Autumn said, I will agree with her on this, that it can't hurt in my mind, but majority of council, are you supportive on sending it on city letterhead and responsible council members?
I'll sign it.
It's fine to send on city letterhead. I would recommend not sending it jointly. I would recommend sending one to each senator separately.
That's how I did it when I sent mine out. Sean, you okay with it?
Yes, I like it. It's nice. Very, very nice. Thank you, Autumn.
Yes, thanks, Autumn, for doing that. Katie, would you get those addressed, and then council members can stop in? I really think it's important that each one of us sign it, showing, you know, we're all behind this and can't hurt. So could you make that happen, Katie, please?
Yes, Your Honor. I'll have it ready tomorrow.
Okay, and then council members can stop in sometime tomorrow. I would assume we want to get this sent out as quick as possible, so they get that. So if you could stop in tomorrow and sign that, that would be great. Okay. Thanks, Autumn, for doing that. I think it's can't hurt. Let's see. We'll move on. Oh, we have a resolution finally. Ratifying participation in the CoStar Salt Contract Agreement. Katie?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville ratifying the action taken by Public Works Support Coordinator Jeannie Smith to enter into the attached salt contract participation agreement via the Pennsylvania Department of General Services CoStars program. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas Public Works Support Coordinator Jeannie Smith on February 12, 2021, entered into a salt contract participation agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of General Services through the CoStars Cooperative Purchasing System, and whereas the salt contract participation agreement is for the term of August 1st, 2021 through July 31st, 2022, and requires a minimum purchase of 2,000 tons of sodium chloride. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Meadville that the action taken by Public Works Support Coordinator Jeannie Smith to enter into the salt contract participation agreement is hereby ratified. Be it further resolved that said agreement is hereby approved and adopted substantially as and for a binding and effective agreement of the City of Meadville in accord with its terms.
Motion, please.
I would move to adopt.
Second.
Second.
Thanks, Autumn. Discussion, Andy?
This is just standard operating procedure. We do this each year. As noted, right, where we provided an estimate based on Public Works analysis of our existing stockpile and our needs, an estimate of what our purchase requirements are. We've submitted a 2,000 ton estimate, and we're required, actually obligated to purchase at least 60% of that stated need. So, and typically we pay this with liquid fuels funding, so we want to make sure it's on record because as part of our liquid fuels audit by the state, they look to see the council has approved this purchase.
Any questions for Andy? Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel? Stearns?
Aye. We have a resolution authorizing signatures for mortgage satisfaction. And before you read that, I just want to thank the Academy Theater for sticking to the agreement, and I'm really pleased that we're at this point. It's been a long time coming, and just happy with that. So, Katie, would you read the resolution, please?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville authorizing signatures on mortgage satisfaction piece between the City of Meadville and the Academy Theater Foundation. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that the attached satisfaction piece is hereby approved and adopted substantially in the form attached here to, subject to final approval by the city solicitor. and the mayor, controller, and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to execute and to attest such copies of the attached satisfaction piece in the manner required by law as may be reasonably required for the purposes of the parties thereto.
Motion, please.
I motion we accept.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Andy, you want to go further discussion on it, or did I cover that pretty well?
Yeah, I'll just note this was a loan that the city made, trying to find the origination date for improvements to the theater. The terms of the loan were renegotiated in 2012 after there had been payments missed and whatnot. And to your point, Mayor, the 2012 agreement has been followed and the obligation satisfied and paid in full. So this is just a formal action to return the note as paid in full and to satisfy the mortgage on file.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. We have a resolution recognizing Kevin Lipcott upon his retirement. Katie?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville recognizing Police Sergeant Kevin Lippincott upon his retirement. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas Kevin Lippincott has served as a valued employee of the City of Meadville for almost 19 years, and whereas Sergeant Lippincott began working for the City of Meadville Police Department on March 25, 2002, and whereas Sergeant Lippincott was promoted to Sergeant and began serving in that capacity on August 26, 2012, and whereas Sergeant Lippincott has performed the duties of his office with dedication, thoughtfulness, and professionalism, and whereas Sergeant Lippincott has retired from active employment with the City of Meadville effective February 9, 2021. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Meadville that City of Meadville Police Sergeant Kevin Lippincott is hereby commended for his many years of dedicated service to this community and its citizens. Be it further resolved by the City Council of the City of Meadville that the best wishes of the city are extended to Sergeant Lippincott for every success in the future.
Motion to accept resignation.
Move to accept with regret.
Second.
Second.
Comments. Autumn, any comments?
Nope, I just think Sergeant Lippincott for his service. Happy retirement.
Jim? Oh, I'm sorry, Autumn. Jim?
Yeah, I'll tell a brief story. 2 or 3 years ago, about 2 o'clock, Kevin knocked on my door. He had discovered a crime. I'm still sleeping. He discovered a crime, apprehended the people who committed the crime, and obtained restitution. That's pretty phenomenal for something that I didn't even know had happened yet. He did a great job for us.
Okay, Larry?
I just wish him the best.
Thank you. Sean?
I wish him the best. He was a real asset to the community and the police force.
Okay. I also would like to thank Kevin for the 19 years of service. Wishing him the very best in retirement and enjoy it. So with that, roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. We have a resolution appointing the Assistant City Manager, Gary Johnson, as an interim City Manager, City Clerk, and Emergency Management Coordinator, effective March 26, 2021. Katie?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville appointing Assistant City Manager Gary Johnson as Interim City Manager, Interim City Clerk, and Interim Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Meadville, effective close of business March 26, 2021. Resolved by the Council of the City of Meadville that whereas the Council of the City of Meadville has received and accepted the resignation of City Manager Andrew Walker, effective close of business Friday, March 26, 2021, with a permanent replacement not yet selected. And whereas the City Manager is responsible for administering the affairs of the city, entering into contracts, and performing other duties as determined by the Council of the City of Meadville and as set forth in the third-class City Code. And whereas it is necessary to appoint an interim city manager to continue administering the affairs of the city until such time as the Council of the City of Meadville appoints a permanent city manager. And whereas the city manager also serves as city clerk as permitted by third-class City Code and emergency management coordinator of the City of Meadville. And whereas the Council of the City of Meadville desires to have Assistant City Manager Gary Johnson serve in the capacity of city manager, city clerk, and emergency management coordinator during the recruitment process for a permanent city manager, and serve in that capacity until such time as a full-time city manager, city clerk, and emergency management coordinator is appointed. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Meadville that Gary Johnson, currently Assistant City Manager / Zoning Officer, is hereby appointed interim city manager, interim city clerk, and interim emergency management coordinator, effective the close of business March 26, 2021.
Motion, please.
Motion we accept.
Second.
I'll second.
Discussion. Andy? I'm not sure what happened to Andy. I think
he's muted.
Looks
yep,
like,
I'm sorry.
There he goes.
So I'll just say that that's a well-written resolution by Deputy City Clerk Katie Wickert. It's all there. The one hat that I wear currently, technically, is that I am named as the Open Records Officer or the Right to Know Officer. That is not changed here yet. We will consider that further at your March 17th meeting, and I'll come back to council with a recommendation on that front. So at this point, though, as referenced here, this resolution would appoint Gary as interim city manager, interim city clerk, and interim emergency management coordinator upon effective my resignation on the 26th of March. I'll also note that when it comes to appointing a permanent emergency management coordinator, the actual action is that council will recommend that an individual be appointed, presumably your new city manager, and that appointment actually gets processed and is approved by the governor. So that'll be a future action once you've got permanent staffing in place.
Okay. Any discussion? I'm going to thank Gary for doing this roll call.
Donahue?
Aye.
McKnight?
Aye.
Roa?
Aye.
Vogel?
Aye.
Stearns?
Aye. I'm trying to get down through this. Is Mike Crowley online tonight?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mike, do you have any questions for us? There he is.
I have two questions, I think, Mayor Stearns. The first one is, do you have a timeline for permanent replacement of the city manager position, or do you have a sense whether you'll have someone in that position on a permanent basis by the time council begins consideration of the budget in November?
I think what we're going to be doing, Mike, and we'll be discussing it later, is a process that we will be going through. Our goals, I hope, is to have a permanent manager before the budget starts. We just got to go through the applications, and then council will be meeting with them, and then make the recommendation.
Yeah, I do think it might have been brought to our attention, though, that that expecting a brand new city manager to construct our budget for 2022 might not be wise or possible. And so I think that was our understanding, was to bring someone in, but that it was my understanding that Gary would have maybe a heavy hand in crafting that. Gary and Debbie.
And earlier, you guys were talking about the plastic covering for porches, and one of the main concerns that you raised was the possibility that some people might be using them almost as a form of insulation or protection against the elements. And I was kind of wondering if you have anything other than anecdotal evidence to suggest, is there any value in that? Like, can you guys confirm for me, based on personal knowledge, I guess, that that's why people do it and it works?
I can say personally that I know at least one resident in the city that does have an enclosure that is heated to keep the when the doors are open to come in from the outside. I don't know how many of them actually use it. I know I've gotten 3 emails and comments from individuals that explain that sometimes, they were talking more of storing their summer furnishings inside of it, keeping them out of the weather, and then opening up in the spring of the year to put their lawn furnishings and decorations back out in the yards. I'm not sure what other council members have heard.
I know people that have used it to cover their patio doors. Some of the older patio doors are drafty. So I've known people that have used them to cover those. Cellar doors, they've done that.
Anyone else want to make a comment? Anything else, Mike?
That's all I can think of right now. Thanks for your help.
Not a problem. Council member statements. Autumn, I'll start with you.
Sure. Try and make it quick. I just have a few updates. The task force is working on the climate action plan through the DEP's climate action planning program, continues to meet. And we are working right now on a plan for community engagement, engaging the public and gathering input and including the community in the creation of that plan. So if folks are interested, they can email me, avogel@cityofmeadville.org, and can get folks plugged in. As I mentioned before, the city was approved as a VISTA site for a 3-year project. And that is a position that's open. It's compensated service. It's considered full-time. There are benefits associated with it, including an education stipend. If people are interested in that position, they can apply at lakeeffectleaders.org and participate in a year of compensated service to the city.
Okay, thank you, Autumn. Sean?
I had a few things. First of all, I'd like to say that the vaccinations seem to be working right now. I think that people are getting vaccinated, but I had 2 of my brothers went and got vaccinated on Monday as a walk-ins. So, I mean, if you watch, and they saw it on Facebook, someone had posted it on Facebook, and they sent them out, and one was over 65 and the other one was a diabetic. So, I mean, I don't apply yet, but it seems if you're looking to get vaccinated, watch, because there are opportunities and you don't have to sign up. This was just walk-ins. Next Tuesday, Meadville, I believe it's Tuesday, they should be playing prep basketball for the District 10 championship. I still haven't been to a game yet. I'm hoping that they let a few people in. It's supposed to be here in Meadville. And we already beat them twice this year, but this is the one that really counts. It's be fun to go. We'll see. I watched them on TV, so I guess if that's all I get, that's what I get. I'd like to remind people that cleanup day is May 15th. There's not going to be any tire collection this year. The state diverted the funding somewhere else, and it's just too costly to do it without the state's money. And but there are other ways to get rid of tires, but we are not taking them on cleanup day. So that's not the place to take them. There'll be a list of what we can take. And then I was just, when Mike Crowley was asking about the plastic, I had been thinking about that. And I was just wondering if that would be considered a fire hazard. I mean, maybe ask the police, the fire department, because I know that indoor house furniture is considered a fire hazard if you put it out on your porch. And I'm just wondering if they'd consider that one. It's just something that came to my mind. I should have brought it up earlier and I forgot. That's all.
Okay, Larry.
Yeah, just Texas has released their travel ban, and other states are going to be following suit. But I just, I still would like to caution people to still wear your mask, still be safe. We're not out of the woods yet. And just weather's getting better. I'm ready for fishing and camping and riding my motorcycle.
Okay.
And also, congratulations to Gary, and I'm looking forward to working with him. And also, good luck to Andy.
Okay. I'm going to just follow up with what Larry said. The weather's getting great. People don't take off your mask. Use safe distancing. We're getting closer. The vaccines are coming out. I just heard they're hoping by, I believe it's June 1st, that 75% of the people will have them, I hope. So maybe we'll get back to some kind of a normal life. And again, we'll just keep track on when we're going to be able to go back to open meetings so that the public can attend the meetings and have input. So with that, I'm going to thank Gary for considering taking the position. And yeah.
Okay, never mind. I'll wait till after you're done.
Oh, okay. Jim, did I forget you? Anyway, I'm sorry. So anyway, just keep the mask on, and we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. Just a public service announcement. It's that time of year again. Property tax and rent rebate forms are out. You can pick them up from your state representative's offices or your state senator's office or Active Aging. And Active Aging does have people who will actually help you fill them out if you need assistance in doing so. Without getting into all of the qualifications, if you're a senior citizen over 65, if you are a widow or widower, 50 or over, or if you're disabled of any age, there are some income limitations. You may very well qualify for the rebate. So get the money that is coming to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Second. Oh, excuse me. We're adjourning to an executive session on personnel. What else? Anything else, Andy?
No, that's all I think.
Just personnel? Okay.
Yeah, I hope that's
second. What's that, Autumn? Oh, okay.
Sure,
Roll
I'll
call.
second. That's sure.
There you go. Roll call.
Donahue,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Roa,
Aye.
Vogel,
Your
Vogel?
Honor,
Go ahead.
Stearns.
Aye. Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to note for Elizabeth's sake, who cannot be heard, I don't believe there's anything in executive session that requires her participation. So she could sign off and not have to struggle without being able to communicate, probably.